Okay, this is what you're about to make. Makes into quite a nice kit. There's only a few parts to put it together. It even has an opening smoke box. There we go. And if you look inside, if I can get the camera around, we have the tubes. I'm going to shut that up. Right, we'll just go through the dimensions. The overall length is 160 millimeters. The overall width is 55 millimeters. The boiler diameter comes in at 40 millimeters. And the height from the base here, where I'm pointing to the top of the funnel, comes in at 100, but you can change that by lowering the funnel down. And the height from there to the top of the firebox is 85. The overall weight comes in at 96 grams. And when you construct it, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think there's 8 parts and a bit of super glue. Lots and lots of detail, as you've already seen. And then if we go to the other end, I'll just move it around so you can see. Plenty of detail at the rear, where the coal goes in, and a little bit of detail that you can add if you want a later date for the cover. And then you've got the sliders for the firebox, the take-off point, and then if we rotate round, and if we then have a look inside, you can see we have the tubes. And then if we look right up inside, there's a bit more detail there of the tubes running through. So that's it. That's the model you're about to make. Hope you enjoyed building it. It's very, very quick and easy. So what follows now is the video on construction. Costing is going to be about 35 quid, including postage. Thank you very much. Right, depending on how busy I am when I put these kits together, I may have done some of the difficult parts for you. For example, I may have already slotted the tube ends into the ends of the boiler. That's those two, so that may already be done. I may have already slipped the steam takeoff cover into its receptacle, so that may already be done for you. And I may have already fitted the door and the handle onto the door. So those items may or may not be already done for you. To make up the boiler assembly, we'll go through each one in detail and then we'll go through assembly. It's fairly straightforward to do, a bit like doing an airfix kit, but you will need some boiling water, which I'll explain later on. So it's not for those young kids to build. Right, we'll start off with one of the large items. This is the firebox. You see you've got plenty of detail on the back, on the sides and the top, and where the boiler goes in. Then next along you have the actual boiler itself, which is in 2 parts which slip together to make up a sort of a seamless joint. It's done this way because if I made it as one piece, when I'm actually making it, because it's built up as a height, it takes too long for me to manufacture. Therefore it's done as 2 separate items. So that's the boiler. And then we have, in each end of the boiler, drops the 2 tube plates to simulate the tubes going through it. They are different. One is higher than the other. You'll see that when you lay them down. So we'll come to that when we fit them. Then you have the smoke box. Again, 2 sides. We've got the front, which is where the cover goes over. Obviously sits up that way. Chimney comes out the top. And then on the back side is where the actual boiler itself plugs into. We have the front cover to go over the boiler. It's got some marks, serrations on it. Unfortunately, because of the way I print it, the resolution is 0.1 millimeter. So on a gentle slope, you're actually going to see the rings a bit like a map, effectively. I'm sure with some paint that will disappear. Then we have the chimney. straightforward, nothing fancy about that. And then we have the actual steam takeoff valve, that's what I call it, which comes in again in two parts, as not easy to manufacture in one part. So we'll come back to that when we build it. So, oh, and the last part is very, very tiny. I'll put it on my hand, you can see it there. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. That's the little wheel that goes on the front of the smoke box cover for opening and shutting it. So that, try not to lose. Right, so we'll run through a dummy run of how it all goes together and the order in which you do it, and then we'll have to use some hot water to make things fit. This particular plastic goes quite malleable and soft when in hot water, which means the build is much, much easier. So put some bits to the side, and first thing we'll deal with is the boiler and its end pieces. Right. Two parts of the boiler. We've got the part that plugs in to the firebox. Then we have this part which has got the takeoff for the steam. You'll notice it's keyed, so there's a little lug there, and on this part you'll see there's a little cutout. So line up the cutouts, but you'll find that it won't go together yet because we need to apply a little bit of hot water. So that's how that one goes. And then into there goes one of the tube plates, and into there goes the other tube plate. So the tube plates are different, and we must do those first of all. So we start off with working out which is the taller one. So if you lay them on a flat surface, the one that is taller is the one we want to use, which is this one. Now this tube plate goes in the end of the boiler that has the ring on it. And again, if you notice, there's a slight cutout inside, and if you spin the tube plate around, you'll find there's also a slight cutout there. That's so that when it goes in, this tube plate lines up with the one at the other end. So again, you can just get the notch in there, and you'll find that it doesn't quite fit. It's a very, very tight fit. So this is where we have to use the hot water, which I will go and get and show you what we do. Right, so we have an empty dish. If you're working on a porous surface like I am here, then you'll need a piece of plastic. What we're going to do, I won't do it yet, but we pour some boiling water into here, 5mm to 10mm deep. Again, check that we've got the correct taller tube plate, and check that we're using the one with the raised end there. Again, confirm that it nearly fits, but not quite. So what we're going to do is we're going to immerse this end into the hot water for about 5-10 seconds. And then when we take it out, it's going to be quite soft on this end. So while it's still hot, we then gently line up. You'll find it will go in quite easily. And then turn it over and on a flat surface, and then push down firmly. And as you push it down, the tube plate will drop inside until this surface here is flush with this surface. So that's what we're going to do. So have your parts ready. Try not to scald yourself. So I pour in my hot water. Drop in the end, 5-10 seconds, and then shake it off, line up the notch. You'll find it drops in very easily at this point, and on a flat surface, push down firmly, and then just check that it's a flush fit all the way around. And then put that one to one side to dry. And now we're going to do the tube plate at the other end. So this is the smaller height tube plate, and we're going to use the section now that has the hole in for the steam takeoff valve. Now this one goes on the end with the rivet detail. Again, if you look, you'll see that there's a slight cutout there, and on the tube plate a slight cutout there. Do a dummy run, line up the cutouts gently, and you'll find it doesn't quite fit in because it's a tight fit. So we do exactly the same into the hot water, make it go nice and soft, shake the water off, and then while it's still hot, line up the cutout. Again, you'll find it starts to drop in nicely, flat surface, and push down firmly. And again, check you've got a nice flush surface there for the tube plate. So just move the water out of the way a moment, and the polythene sheet, and we'll explain the next section. Right, the next two parts to go together is the steam takeoff part and its corresponding part that goes with. Now this one slides together so that that goes into there and pushes all the way through until it's flush with the bottom. I couldn't make this as one piece due to the way the construction, when it's done in the liquid poly printer. So with this one, what you're going to have to do here is a small pair of pliers, because we have to immerse this particular part, not this one in the water. So we put that in. Again, have your plastic sheet ready. Now we've got to do this one the right way round. So when he's warmed or hotted up enough, should I say, take him out. Now it wants to go in from the rivet end like that. And again, on a flat surface, push down and make sure it's flush with the bottom. So I put that to one side, and we'll move on to the next section. Right, next part is we're going to fit the steam takeoff valve into its opening. It's quite a tight fit, so the first thing we need to do is at one end you'll notice there's maybe a little burr, so just scrape that away with the knife. Now when this goes in, it's important that when it goes in, it doesn't go in at any silly angles. It wants to go in at 90 degrees like that. You'll find it's a tight fit. So again, take this particular part. What we need to do to make sure that's a nice fit into there, again, we need to just soak in hot water that bottom section there. So into the water, but of course by now the water may have cooled down a bit, so you perhaps need to reboil the kettle. Best to play safe. So again, 5-10 seconds in there. That should have expanded it enough. Shake off the excess and then slowly insert as I've done there. And it wants to go, well, it's up to you how far you put it in, but that to me looks about right. And then look from that direction to make sure that it's not cockeyed in either direction. And again, view it from that end. And again, make sure that it's not cockeyed in that direction. Leave that to cool down a little bit. This isn't permanently fixed, but it's got it in the hole, which is the important thing. So you can still maneuver it around if you need to. So we'll stick that to one side to dry a moment, not dry, to cool down. So while we're waiting on that, we'll move on. Right, so once that's done, what we then have to do is to firmly glue these parts in. So what we do is with just a couple of spots of super glue, we drop it in from the inside, just in sort of 3 locations, and that'll hold the plate in position. So I will use a nice runny super glue. Cocktail stick, I'll just break the point off. Well, hopefully you can see what I'm going to do if I hold it like that. So Again, make sure it's flush on the end first of all, and then just go in and just touch it. Let it run down in. If you sort of do that in 3 places, that'll be enough to hold that in. And then on this one, we do exactly the same. Again, in with the glue, just three drops, 3 positions is more than adequate to hold it in. 1, 2, 3. Obviously forgot to say, just make sure that it's still flush on that end, which it is. Right, because once this part here is fitted to this part here, you can't get inside to glue in steam takeoff. So we're now going to glue that one in, so make sure you're happy with the height and you're happy that it's at 90 degrees in all directions. Looks pretty good to me. And again, what we're going to do is just put a little bit of super glue in a couple of places. One there and one there, just to lock it in position. Right, so we then leave that to dry. Put there and there for the moment. And then we'll move on to the next little section. Now this is where we add, we don't need the polythene sheet anymore, where we're going to add the little handle to the end of the smoke box door. Now this is very straightforward. It's recessed on one side and flat on the other, and you want the recess showing up. Just offer it over the hole, over the spigot that sticks out. Get it into what you think is the right position. Square it up. And then when you're happy, the smallest amount of super glue just on the top. Just run it around. So that locates the hand wheel on the end. So again, we can put that to one side. Right, we'll now move on to preparing the firebox. The supports either side may have a little bit of sprue sticking on the bottom of them. Just run a knife along and take those off. Same on that side. And then check the holes. Again, at the top of the hole there, maybe a little bit of a sprue which you can cut off. That support that's in there when it's actually being made. The hole in the side here may want just cleaning out with a knife and a round file, just to make it round. You'll find a bit of flashing in there sometimes. Then we move on to the side that the boiler is going to go into. And again, if you look carefully, you'll see that there's a slight notch, so you can line up the boiler in the right direction. And in the very top there, if you can see it, there may be a little notch, and that just wants cleaning off with a knife very gently. And maybe another one over on the other side. Again, this is part of the sprue that supports it when it's being made. So at that point we can now put that piece down and we move on to the smoke box. Smoke box has two ends, two sides. That's the side the door goes into. There's the hinges, which we'll come to later. And then on the other side you've got where the actual boiler plugs into. And there's a slight recess all the way around that it will go into. So there should be no work to do on that. And ditto for the funnel. there should be no work to do on that. Funnel, should be no work on that at all. That's the last part we fit, next to the smoke box, of course. So what we can now do is to assemble these two parts together. Again, it's obvious there's a notch, there's a cutout. Line them up and they'll push together. Now you can push these together without heating them up, but I found it just so much easier to push it together when they're hot. So we get our hot water out again, so just heat it up. Now for this one, we heat up this particular part, not that part. So again, we want a flat surface, piece of polythene ready to push them together. So we heat up this part in the water, and then out of the water, and then line up, and you'll find that it goes together quite nicely. Flat surface and push down. Don't twist because of the notch that's in there, and you'll find that that actually lines up quite nicely and is a good hard fit. Now, I find there's no need to glue that together. It will tend to stay there on its own. If it does tend to come apart, just push it back together again, because once it's cooled down, it's easy to take it apart. So that's that part. If you're going to paint it, obviously the paint will soak in and seal the two parts together. So that's the boiler ready. So the next job we move on to is fitting the boiler to the firebox. Now you'll notice there's a little notch in the top which will line up with the notch in the firebox itself. So this is not going to fit to start with, because again we need to heat things up. So if you just sort of rotate that around, and all of a sudden you'll find the notch drops in, and then as you come down you'll find that you can't quite push it in. It may go, it may not, but it's best to do this when it's hot. So what we do is pop him out again, and this time we want to heat this part up. So I'll just get some more hot water. Right, so that's replenished my hot water. So we take this part, because this is the part this time which we want to heat up, so that we can load this into it. So again, into the water, but you only want to take the water up to sort of that there, so it just heats up this front face. And again, we drop him in. And then just blow off the water and line up the notch. It'll only go one way, and then you'll find it actually just falls into position. So laying down, flat surface, gentle pressure, and it will drop into position. Don't push too hard, otherwise you'll knock the notches off the back. Right, so we leave that a moment to cool down. And then we will move on then to fitting the smoke box. Right, once that's in position and you're happy with it, so now some super glue on my finger. Right, once that's in position, you're happy, then from inside you'll need to glue that into position. And the way that's done is, as before, you need to take your super glue and just touch the inside with the super glue where it comes in, just in sort of 3 places, good enough, and it will wick into the joint. Very difficult for me to show you what I'm doing here, but it'll be fairly obvious where the join line is. Again, make sure good pressure pushed in. If we're happy with that, we can then move on to the smoke box. Again, fairly straightforward how this goes, but there's no notches to line up this time, so it is possible to fit it, being silly, at a very silly angle. So what we're looking to do is to fit it, right end of course, into the slight recess. It won't go at the moment because it's a tight fit, and then to look down and line up that surface with that surface. So that's what you're trying to do. I'll just hold that so you can see what I'm trying to get in the camera there. I mean, what we don't want is that or that. It's got to be like that. That makes sense? Right, so to do that, we have to heat this particular part up and this surface here. So again, into the hot water and get him ready and shake off the hot water. And then I'm going to have to swap hands because I'm not left-handed. And then it will go into the recess quite nicely. Maybe a tight fit. There we go. Right, okay, I'm going to have to do a slight design change there, I think. Right, it will be a nice fit when I've made the slot slightly wider. Right, okay. So there's going to be a slight change there before we do that. And that change, I'm going to just take the edge off there. But for you, this will already be done and it will be a nice sliding fit. This is the first one I've actually done as a pre-production model. Right, we get him hot again. You see, there's not much of a recess to drop into there. So, I think we may change that slightly for the next version, or the version that you'll get. So I'll persevere for the moment. Right. So we'll try that again. Yeah, that's better. Right, I've done the changes. I've just sort of edited in this bit of the video to show the difference. So what we've actually done is I've increased the recess with the stop in there now by 3mm, and on this particular part I've increased the overall length by 3mm, and you'll find there's a bit of a step there. So now you won't actually have to put this one in hot water to put it together. Just slide in and it's a nice fit. So you'll be able to rotate it until everything lines up when you've got the funnel and the steam pipe outlet, for want of a better word. So when you're happy you're in the right position there, you can then go in there and just put a couple of blobs of super glue on the inside. So that's what yours will look like, not what you've just seen. Right. So what we're looking for now is an alignment down that way. And I'm pretty good there actually, so I'm quite pleased with that. That's okay. So at that point, it's just a gentle pressure to push it together. And it should be fairly square all round. Again, check that it lines up. Not to worry if it doesn't fully line up, because when it's cooled down, the plastic takes on its natural size and you're able to twist it slightly accordingly to bring it up to the right size, bring it up to make it square. Right, next job then is to fit the chimney. Obviously the chimney goes into the top, and now again that is a tight fit, and you'll also notice that the chimney has 4 rivets. Up to you how you put them in, but I would suggest you put it with the rivet facing forward like that. How far you push it in is up to you entirely, but again we're going to need a little bit of help with some hot water. So again we need to heat that area up. So if we go in there with the hot water, shake that out, drop the funnel in, just give it a little bit of a twist and a wobble as you go in, and then line up the rivets. As I say, how far you put it in is up to you. Right, okay, so my part has come apart. That's okay because that's cooled down. So give it a wobble until you're happy the rivets are lined up. And that should automatically take on a nice 90 degree. So this is now obviously cooled down and is a good fit, would be a good fit. As I keep saying, your version will have a much better fit than that. So that's lined up. Right, we don't need hot water anymore. So the next job is to fit the smoke box door. So we can move some of this out of the way. Now the smoke box door, you'll notice there are some holes running through it, and on the actual hinges there's some holes running through it. Now I supply with the kit, if I got a piece of wire which is like a hinge wire, and you'll find that that is a nice fit in there and there. And you also need to check there's a nice fit in the door, which it should be. There and there. So this is the tricky bit. You've got to be careful you don't break any bits off here. So the door will drop on. And then you slide in the hinge through the first one, through the second, and then using a pair of snips, if you push him all the way up, and then just snip off the top, and then with a pair of cocktail sticks just pushing down gently, and there you have your opening door. I say opening door, it should open, which it does. It's not open all the way. So it's up to you how you have it. That's the completed model. So I'll just put a pair of tweezers underneath to bring it up to the right level. So I think that makes quite a nice model to go in your workshop area. Obviously you don't have to fit all the parts. You could just have the boiler or just a smoke box or a firebox to make it look as part of being built, but it's up to you entirely. That's about as far as we go on that. Any comments would be greatly appreciated. I'm going to sell these, including postage, it's going to be £35, which I think is pretty good actually, because there's a lot of detail on there compared to some of the terrible rubbishy 3D prints that are out there. I think this is far, far better. But then that's my opinion and I'm biased. Anyway, hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching, and if you've purchased one, thank you for purchasing.